RFK Jr., a member of Democrat royalty, joins the Trump campaign, as if this election cycle could get any crazier. And what should Christians do now that neither party is 100% pro-life? Pick the lesser of two evils or abstain altogether? Plus, free speech keeps slipping away, even in public meetings before government, which is sort of unconstitutional. But will anyone even notice? This is your favorite night of the week, The Deep End, on Tim Hatch Live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Monday night at 7:30, where we are discussing the news of the day through a Christian, or shall I say pastoral, point of view. This is The Deep End, Season 7, Episode 36, and my name is Tim Hatch, and I'm so glad that you are here. And if you're here for the first time, well, maybe give it time before you hit the like and subscribe and notification bell. But if you're here for the third or fourth time, would you click all three? Make sure that you get notified every time we go live on this channel. So I just want to let you know that this content is for educational purposes as we discuss politics and Christianity and how we should view the world around us. But things are really changing, really shifting when it comes to the federal electorate. I remember the good old days when we had this clear distinction between Democrat and Republican, and nary the twain shall meet. Well, it's 2024, and that means anything can happen and a whole lot more. That sounded like a rhyme. But this is what's happened now, the unimaginable. A member of the Democrat royal family, Camelot itself, RFK Jr., as in Robert Kennedy's son. He has come out to endorse and now begin to campaign for the man that we were told is Orange Hitler for the last 10 years. And that brings me to Deep End News.
Deep End News. The news you choose if you could choose news.
So Friday, after much speculation, Robert F. Kennedy, or RFK Kennedy Jr., did come out and suspend his presidential campaign and then, in fact, endorse Donald J. Trump for president, and now again promising to campaign for him. And he took to this amazing speech, which was really worth the watch. It's about 45 minutes long. I encourage you to watch the entire speech. He brought up the issues that he faced getting into the race. He wanted to run as a Democrat. He wanted to primary Joe Biden, the sitting Democrat president, and he faced incredible obstacles. They changed the rules to keep him off the ballot. They demanded he get a million signatures to be on the ballot, something that has never been done before. He said, quote, "I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big agriculture, and big money," end quote. And he's not wrong on the big money, because if you have watched at all the DNC, the Democratic National Convention from last week, you saw notable billionaires and millionaires were all keynote speakers in their convention. Far away from the Democratic roots of being the grassroots, working class, labor class movement. Now it is the class of the elitists. Now it is the class of the big money celebrities, such as Oprah Winfrey, a lifelong celebrity, a billionaire in her own right. Good for Oprah. I do not disparage her that. She's made a ton of money, and she is a wildly famous celebrity, worldwide, world known, but she was a keynote speaker, and she whined at the Democrat National Convention about facing inequality and unfairness at work. This is Oprah freaking Winfrey.
From the redwood forests, love those redwoods, to the Gulf Stream waters, I've seen racism and sexism and income inequality and division. I've not only seen it, at times I've been on the receiving end of it.
A privileged member of society, also claiming to be in association with the poor and underprivileged. I don't know how people miss that, but it is definitely not oppression by any stretch of the imagination. He talked about the primary process, talking about the sham, rigged primary process that was intended to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. He talked about them installing a candidate so unpopular with voters that she dropped out of the 2020 race, Kamala Harris, without winning a single delegate. He talked about the media, how ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN combined to give him only 2 live interviews over the course of his entire campaign, even while he polled well into the high double digits. And then on endorsing Trump, he said that these causes drove him to the race, free speech, the war in Ukraine, the war on children, and now the only choice he's left with is to support President Trump. Oh, and by the way, he talked about the Ukraine war, which we have a video on. You got to listen to what he said about this. And chronic diseases, we also got to talk about this. He said so much, it's worth highlighting a couple of moments. Let's go to this first one where he talks about the difference between the DNC and the RNC. Watch.
Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me.
Yeah, that's an incredible parallel or comparison. 147 times Trump was mentioned in the first day of the DNC, and then Biden 2 times mentioned in the RNC. And remember, friends, Biden was still the nominee when the Republican National Convention was being held. Later, he called out the U.S.'s decisions that led to the conflict in Ukraine. Now, young people, listen to me, because I remember when you were crying out that this was World War III when Russia invaded Ukraine, and you were certain that the end of the world was upon us, and I had to actually produce a video that actually kind of went viral on TikTok, talking about how this stuff happens. Wars and rumors of wars are going to come. Jesus told us to expect it, and yet that was not the signal of the end times. They would be increasing before the last days, but they would be part of the preliminary activities, if you will, on the cosmic level for the end times. So when it comes to the war in Ukraine, the debate has been, how much should we fund it? How do we end it? Well, not really how do we end it, because I do believe it is a money laundering scheme for the elitists in our government uniparty system. But the debate has been traditionally, well, how do we handle Ukraine? How do we support Ukraine? Or should we support Ukraine? But no one, nary a person has asked, well, how did it really start? Is Putin just a modern-day Hitler bent on destroying Eastern Europe and then eventually taking over the world? Or maybe U.S. policy had something to do with the Russian aggression on Ukraine. And RFK dared broach that subject. And now you start to get a sense of this is why they silenced him here in this next clip. Watch.
I want to say a word about the Ukraine war. The military-industrial complex has provided us with a familiar comic book justification like they do on every war. That this one is a noble effort to stop a supervillain, Vladimir Putin, invading the Ukraine and then to thwart his Hitler-like march across Europe. In fact, tiny Ukraine is a proxy in a geopolitical struggle initiated by the ambitions of the U.S. neocons for American global hegemony. I'm not excusing Putin for invading Ukraine. He had other options. But the war is Russia's predictable response to the reckless neocon project of extending NATO to encircle Russia, a hostile act. The credulous media rarely explain to Americans that we unilaterally walked away from 2 intermediate nuclear weapons treaties with Russia and then put nuclear-ready Aegis missile systems in Romania and Poland. This is a hostile act. And that the Biden White House repeatedly spurned Russia's offer to settle this war peacefully.
Those are important points that should be brought up. Nobody brings them up. RFK dares go there. And you start to learn, oh, this is why the Democrat machine went to work to silence him and to cordon him off to the realm of the insane and incontinent, because he presented a threat to the narrative. Now, let us not forget that there is a moment where Joe Biden proudly talks about threatening aid to Ukraine over a prosecutor that was going after the company that his son, Hunter Biden, was working for at the time when Joe Biden was vice president under Barack Obama. And he proudly talks about it. He was going to call the president. He was going to threaten U.S. aid to Ukraine if they didn't lay off investigating his son. Then Joe Biden gets into the White House and the wheels come off with regards to Ukraine. And now we're just sending billions and billions of our taxpayer dollars over to that nation to fund this endless war that perhaps U.S. policy under Joe Biden initiated in the first place by starting to encircle Russia with NATO allies and such and so and on it goes. With regards to the history of our country, the military industrial complex has a vested interest in these wars perpetuating. And finally, and I'm only bringing up 3 clips from this talk. Again, watch the whole speech, but he talks about the poisoning of our children, bringing up the alarming statistics regarding how much our kids have grown unhealthy over the last couple of decades. And the numbers are astounding, and I want you to pay attention to this content. Watch.
There's been an explosion of neurological illnesses that I never saw as a kid: ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's, autism. In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500. Now autism rates in kids are 1 in 36, according to CDC nationally. Nobody's talking about this. 1 in every 22 kids in California has autism. And this is a crisis that 77% of our kids are too disabled to serve in the United States military. What is happening to our country? And why isn't this in the headlines every single day? There's nobody else in the world that is experiencing this. This is only happening in America. About 18%, and by the way, you know, there has been no change in diagnosis, which the industry sometimes like to say. There has been no change in screening.
Important qualifier.
This is a change in incidence. In my generation, 70-year-old men, the autism rates are about 1 in 10,000. In my kids' generation, 1 in 34. I'll repeat, in California, 1 in 22.
Wow. And so he goes on there and he goes into even greater detail as to the incredible, unhealthy pandemic that is happening amongst our children. You have to ask yourself, how does our country go from 1 in 1,500 with autism to 1 in 36? How do we get to 77% of our children too disabled to serve in the military? This is a country destroying itself from within, just like the Roman Empire. We're going to get to the point where we cannot even field a military. We cannot even fight a battle. When the Muslims come, and they are coming, we won't even put up a fight. Why? Because too many of our kids will be toting around their therapeutic dogs and emotional support pets to just cope with life. But why? Nobody asks why. And this is so important. And it's something that I say. We cannot just address the problems. We have to find the root. What causes these problems? And again, the diagnosis system has not changed. It has been the number of incidents that have changed. And these are issues that we should be focused on. As a pastor, I can concur with his assessment. Health is on the ballot in 2024. And the basic framework for his talk here is very simple. And the motivation for him now joining the Trump campaign. Can we love our children more than we hate each other? And that is the question of the day. That is the question of the year. The question of this generation. Can we love the next generation more than we hate the opposing political party? Can we love children enough to do what's right in regards to their gender identity and not mislead them? Of course, you know my stance on this. You're too young and you shouldn't make those decisions. And we should not trans the kids, period, full stop. In fact, we should not trans the adults. But that's probably a bridge too far to go right now in the cultural dialogue. And as a Christian pastor, we have to find the places where we can find harmony with people who might disagree with us on other issues to fight for the serious issues that affect the youngest and most vulnerable among us. So on and on he went, and it was a fabulous speech, and I encourage you to watch it. And then came the rally in Phoenix when Donald Trump introduced him. And my friends, I have never seen any political person introduced to this kind of fanfare, pyrotechnics, and the crowd went wild to the point where Trump even had to say, wow. And I just want to show you that moment right here. Watch.
Robert F. Kennedy.
I only bring that up because it is astounding to see. It is astounding to see two polar opposite figures coming together to fight for what they both believe. And the question is, should you believe it? Should you believe the things that the Republicans and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are fighting for? Well, I think we can all agree that we need some accountability in the food and drug industries and their relationship to the regulatory industries in our country. I mean, we don't want big agricultural organizations or companies deciding what pesticides can get into our food, do we? We don't want big pharma determining, like Pfizer and Moderna, determining what vaccines are absolutely necessary for your kids to go to school if they pay lobbyists enough to affect policy in Washington, D.C., do we? Don't we want independent regulatory industries? And in the speech at that rally, that's exactly what RFK Jr. Argued for. And I would suggest that you have to ask this question. Why does it take this much to get health on the ballot? Why does it take this much to get health on the ballot? We are an unhealthy country. And that is perhaps the best news out of this very strange union. I've said this before, I'll say it again. 2024 is the year of strange bedfellows. We got Elon Musk on board with Donald Trump. And we've got, at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the Queers for Palestine. So people who could literally not live in freedom in Palestine are supporting Gaza right now. They would literally be thrown off a building to their death if they identify as gay. But yet they're going to support the Gaza regime and the Hamas regime to rule and reign in Palestine in the name of freedom. Strange bedfellows. Stranger bedfellows I cannot find. And then at the other end of the spectrum, Elon Musk, RFK, Donald Trump, did not have this union on my 2024 bingo card, but it is a new day. And we have to ask this question. Will it make any difference if RFK is now campaigning for Donald Trump? He did say that he was going to remove his name from the swing states, not the red and blue states, because it would make no difference. And if you live in Massachusetts, you understand what I'm talking about, or California, Oregon. But what will make a difference in those all-important swing states? Here was the national polling average as of July 21st. You could see that Kennedy was trending downward as soon as the Democrat regime installed Kamala Harris, who had not earned a single vote. Okay, the Democrat machine has installed her. Just remind you, we're supposed to believe that Democrats believe in democracy when they install their own candidate without a single primary vote for her. And so then you see Kennedy trending downward. It would seem that Kennedy was splitting the baby there between Trump and Biden, now Harris, because as soon as Harris becomes the nominee, Kennedy slides down to 4%, 5%. Some polls have him at 5-6%. So will that 5 to 6% slide over to the Trump camp? But that remains to be seen. What we don't need to wait to see is how the media has assembled. The left-wing talking points media Avengers have assembled, and they have targeted RFK as never before. You see, there's a magical letter that if it's next to your name, the media loves you. That letter is D. But the moment that you dare say anything nice or perhaps even support someone with any other letter next to their name, you are now officially fair game to go all in on all of your life. They will now mock him and condemn him and call him a ridiculous, unserious candidate. Some of the headlines that you may not have seen but are the following. MAGA turns to roadkill eating anti-vaxxer with brainworm to make America healthy again. Or this is another person who's endorsing Donald Trump, Maya. This is what they do. She isn't even from America. Internet reacts to Maya endorsing Donald Trump, backs RFK Jr. And then the weirdest moments of RFK Jr.'s historically weird presidential campaign. Then, of course, RFK Jr.'s sister blasts his support for Trump. And then Remember when the media was all in a fuss over Donald Trump supposedly mocking a physically challenged reporter? And we heard about this for 8+ years, so that we shouldn't allow political figures or even commentators to mock someone's physical malady, physical handicap. Well, of course, that standard gets thrown out the window on CNN as soon as RFK Jr. decides to campaign for Donald Trump. And listen to this CNN talking head just going all in on disrespecting someone's physical condition. Watch.
Cheerios for breakfast. This was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And trying to get any logic out of that is good luck with that. Because it's, one, you can't understand what he says. Two, if you can't understand what he says. And reminded of a line in Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles when somebody gets up and gives an indecipherable speech. He says, "Who can argue with that? That's authentic frontier gibberish." And that's exactly what that is.
Yeah. Okay, so authentic frontier gibberish, according to a la Blazing Saddles, according to this CNN talking head who probably couldn't understand a coherent political argument if he heard one. Let's just be fair. He is from CNN. Then there was his own sister turning on him, Kerry Kennedy, taking to Twitter or X to make sure that everybody understood that the rest of the Kennedy family was still firmly fixed in the media industrial billionaire complex that is now the current Democratic Party. A statement on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s announcement: "We want an America filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future, a future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris," who was handpicked by the Democratic establishment, "and Walsh. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It is sad ending to a sad story." That is Kathleen Kennedy signing on with that. Courtney, Carrie, Chris, and Rory. This is a family that is filled with abusers and criminals, just in case you're wondering. And so take that for what it's worth. Now we have to ask this question, and I have to give my opinion on this because that's what this show is about. We do have to talk about the elephant in the room, or shall I say the unborn elephant in the room, as in we are now at a precipice in American politics where we have neither major party candidate supporting 100% pro-life values. Gone are the days of George W. Bush and before him Ronald Reagan, who were firmly entrenched in the pro-life camp. The overturning of Roe v. Wade has shifted the electorate process for Republicans. As comedian Bill Maher says, the Republicans are like the dog that caught the bumper of the car and now they don't know what they're going to do. And to some extent, he is pretty much right, because this has created a talking point for the Democrats who say, see, the Republicans are going to take away your right to choose, ladies, and so you better get on board with us or you will lose all of your fundamental freedoms. And so Trump has hedged a bit, and this is a increasing hedge if you've been paying attention. He has come out this week and said he will not sign a national abortion ban. He said he said that months ago. Today, J.D. Vance, his vice presidential candidate, has said he will veto a national abortion ban should Congress write one into law. So abortion is safe for both parties, for both party candidates. And Christians are confused. What do we do when neither party candidate is 100% pro-life? Some of you are going to say this: I just can't vote for any candidate who isn't pro-life, such as the commentator from the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh, who took to a National Celebrate Life weekend gala to give the following speech, saying he will 100% never compromise on the issue of abortion. And then I have some thoughts about his speech, but listen to it first.
I would not compromise on abortion, even if it really did mean losing every election from now until kingdom come. And that's because to accept child murder is to forfeit your soul. And if we are really a country where child murder is so popular, where acceptance of child murder is so fundamental to our way of life, that it's impossible to win if you oppose it, then we are not a country worth saving. If that were the case, then we deserve whatever destruction's coming our way. God will strike us down for our sins. And I couldn't stand in the way of that if I wanted to, and I don't want to. I will never accept abortion. I will never compromise on it. I will never give up any ground. I will not give an inch, not an inch. All abortion is wrong, always. It is never okay to kill an innocent and defenseless human being. It is always our obligation as human beings, as parents, as Americans, to protect the innocent, especially our children. And if we cannot do that, if we won't do that, then we are worthless. There are no exceptions to this. None, period. I would rather die than compromise on this issue.
I have some thoughts, as I imagine you would imagine I had. And my thoughts are this. You got to be careful when you're preaching to the choir in these moments and say such things, such absolutist statements, because I'm with you, Matt. I'm 100% pro-life. We should never take the life of an innocent person in the womb. Right, absolutely. But there are such things as ectopic pregnancies where the embryo gets stuck in the uterine, the fallopian tube and does not make it to the uterus. And I understand that the procedure is different than abortion, but that is a human life that is terminated to save the life of the mother, and it is scientifically proven that it does do just that. And then on top of that, you have to remember, as every Christian listening to me right now does, there are larger issues at stake in every election than just one. And as much as I wish we had a 100% pro-life candidate in the race, we have to work with what we have, not with what we want. We have to also look at history. We have to regard the fact that William Wilberforce worked to end the slave trade in Britain for decades, repeating the same speech in Parliament every single year and being ignored and struck down by vote every single year until he wasn't. And even then, he didn't win outlawing slavery. He just outlawed the slave trade, which led to outlawing slavery. But he worked within the system. He worked within a system that endorsed the idea that some humans were worth less than other humans and deserved or should be enslaved based on the color of their skin or where we got them from. He had to work within the system. He did not call for the destruction of the British Empire. The British Empire is still around hundreds of years later, thankfully, because he worked within the system. And right now, pro-life people, Christians, listen to me. We have to use reason. We have to use our brains. We have to have rational, common sense thoughts about this as we explore ways to inject pro-life ideologies into our culture while at the same time not being absolutists to our culture that cannot handle it at this moment. There will come a time, I am fully convinced, should the Lord tarry, there will come a time where the act of abortion would be so unthinkable. It would be as unthinkable as enslaving a person right now is, that we will have won. Because I do believe the church is still the salt of the earth and the light of the world. But think about salt in itself. It is a small part of a larger whole to preserve, to keep from decay. And let us not forget the lesson in Genesis when God speaks to Abram and says, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abram, or I think at that time he's Abraham. No, I think he's still Abram. No, he's Abraham. Abraham argues with God. Will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? Will you spare the city if you find 50? And the Lord said, sure, find 50 and I'll spare it. He whittles them down all the way to 10. Will you spare the city for 10? And there was probably 150,000 plus people in Sodom and Gomorrah. And God says, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy 149,990 people. You got to think about the mercy of God, the compassion of God. Are we a country worth saving? Yes. Because we are a terrible country except for all the others. America is still the freest, most prosperous, most wonderful country on this planet. We enjoy far more freedoms than any other place. Okay, until Elon Musk populates Mars, there's nowhere else to go, by the way. So we've got to work with what we have, not with what we want. And we have to choose. Because to not choose, to be a absolutist on any issue is dangerous. That's just not how politics work. Politics work with the people. Politics work with the policies that affect the people. You have to win this argument not on being an absolutist. You have to win this argument on presenting a better way forward, a far more palatable argument. And yes, Trump's language lately is disconcerting. He even took the Truth Social this weekend to say, quote, my administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights, end quote. I mean, let us not forget that Trump was pro-choice as a New York billionaire until he ran for president as a Republican. So this should not be shocking to anyone who is in the Trump camp. But we do have a clear distinction between the Democrats and the Republicans when it comes to the issue of abortion. And I want to unpack that for you just so that you're clear. And even if you might be in the Matt Walsh camp of we aren't worth saving if we aren't pro-life or if we don't have the pro-life viewpoint. Okay? Because I disagree with that. Every country and every society ever in history since the Garden of Eden has been marred by sin in some way, shape, or form, both in our actions and in our attitudes. And God has not wiped out the earth. In fact, he promised not to. He promised not to. The next time he wipes out the earth, it's game over. So until that happens, we got to work with this marred, flawed earth as Christians and affect change and not give up and just hope for the destruction of our society because of one issue, as important as that issue is. You might disagree. Please let me know in the comments below. Would love your feedback here because it's an important issue and it's important conversations that Christians need to have now that both major party candidates are no longer 100% pro-life. But there is a distinction. There is a distinction between the RNC and the DNC. For instance, this news out of the DNC, the Democrat National Campaign featured Planned Parenthood offering free abortions and vasectomies at a mobile clinic near the DNC. And during the convention, a 4-day event where they celebrated a woman who has not received a single primary vote as the candidate for president on the Democratic side, 20 to 30 patients were serviced in the mobile clinic near the DNC. Planned Parenthood tweeted out, "Here we come, beep, beep, to kill your babies and cut off your potential for procreation." And, you know, I would like to say that some people probably shouldn't procreate, but that's for another argument. And then there was this, a 20-foot inflatable IUD, this is a contraceptive device, was standing tall and proud in the convention center to signal to the young ladies out there that we are the party of free and unlimited, consequence-free sex. And then there is Kamala herself, whose name I don't care about mispronouncing anymore because I heard other Democrat people talking about it and mentioning it and mispronouncing it constantly. You see, you're only racist if you mispronounce her name, if you don't have the magic D next to your name. So I'm done trying to play that stupid game. But here she is talking about the fact that she would stop state laws on abortion as the head of our federal government. Watch.
And on the issue of access to reproductive health care, for example. And again, it's my background, perhaps fighting for justice through the courts. I am prepared to say that for any state that passes a law that violates a woman's constitutional right to reproductive health care, that our Department of Justice will stop that law from going into effect.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting that you will now have the federal government stopping laws that states might pass when it comes to abortion. That is called anti-federalism. That is called top-down dictates from the federal government about what your state can and cannot do. Now imagine if a right-wing candidate said, in regards to gun ownership, I will stop state laws that do not permit the constitutional open carry, right to carry a weapon. The media would go nuts over that. But this just gets ignored because it's Kamala. Or Kamala, whatever you want to call her. And that's where we are. And then at the DNC itself, there was this guy who totally trolled the young ladies at the convention, asking a question of this young female Democrat voter. Would you choose democracy or abortion? Listen.
Would you rather have a democracy or access to abortions?
Either or. I feel like that's a very tough question to answer. I feel like that's almost not possible to answer. I feel like I couldn't pick one or the other.
Even if you had to choose?
If I had to choose.
Can we get a final answer? I know it's hard.
I guess access to abortions.
Oh, my word. Unbelievable that the abortion argument is that strong for young women. And it is working as this gap for Trump and Harris support is by far widest amongst the young women ages 18 to 29. So solidly in the Harris camp because killing unborn kids is just that important. Oh, and also Halloween comes early for the Harris voter. Imagine dressing up as a pill intended to end human life. You don't, because it actually happened outside the Democratic National Convention last week in Chicago, where they dressed up, young ladies dressed up as the drug used to end pregnancies. Are you starting to see the clear distinction between the party candidates on the issue of abortion? And then let us not forget, I already mentioned this, but Walsh removed the requirement to save unborn babies born alive after abortion. So there is an obvious choice here. And I also want to do one more thing. I want to remind you how far the Democrats have gone on abortion. There was a day when President Bill Clinton said that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And those days are long gone, but we do have the visual proof, even from as early or recent as 2008, Hillary Clinton and current President Joe Biden talking about the fact that abortion is not right. We shouldn't be championing it. We shouldn't be dressing up as baby-killing pills. Here, watch.
I think abortion should remain legal, but it needs to be safe and rare. And I have spent many years now as a private citizen, as First Lady, and now as Senator, trying to make it rare, trying to create the conditions where women had other choices. I have supported adoption, foster care. I helped to create the campaign against teenage pregnancy, which fulfilled our original goal 10 years ago of reducing teenage pregnancies by about a third. And I think we have to do even more. You know, when I think about this issue, I think about the whole range of concerns and challenges associated with it, and I will continue to do what I can to reduce the number and to improve and increase the care for women, and particularly the adoption system and the other opportunities that women would have to make different choices.
I do not view abortion as a choice and a right. I think it's always a tragedy, and I think that it should be rare and safe. And I think we should be focusing on how to limit the number of abortions.
Those days are long over in the Democratic camp. And so we also have a parallel here on the screen of the differences between Trump and Kamala Harris. And I won't read all of this for you. You can just search it, pause the video if you want to, or screenshot it for yourself and consider the differences. There is one radical pro-death candidate, and then there is a exceptions candidate, or even a 15 or 16 week ban candidate. And there's far more that the administration under Harris would want to do to make sure that you had access to killing your baby. And we have to remember something about the abortion lobby. They always lie to you and say that it's about rape and incest, not incense, incest. But most of the time, as this chart shows us, most of the time, abortion patients were in their 20s and had at least one previous birth. So this is not about rape. This is not about incest. This is not about the extreme cases. This is about, I don't want a baby. A baby is going to mess with my life. A baby is going to make my life slow down. My financial independence become questionable, is going to stifle the person that I want to be. Again, it is rooted in that philosophy that RFK talked about in his speech. Can we love our kids more than we hate each other? And for too long in our culture, really the pro-abortion movement is the birth child of the love yourself movement. It is the lover of self birth child, because when you love yourself and hate other people, and it's all about you getting ahead and living the dream and becoming amazing, kids get in the way of that. And even when we have kids, we make the kids about us being amazing parents. Oh, look at how successful my little Johnny is. Oh, look at how amazing my Susie is. And then we prop them up and we tell them they can do no wrong and they can be whoever they want. And then they become other genders. And we say, wait, not that far. And then we get confused because of the culture that we've created, because at the end of the day, it's the love of self. Here's what parenting is. Parenting is denying yourself for the sake of your children. Parenting is taking hard choices all the time to make sure that someone other than you lives better, lives healthy, lives right. That's what parenting is. That's what life is supposed to be. Parenting is discipleship. It is how God eliminates you from the equation of loving you, so that you learn to love other people. And then you learn these lifelong skills to be a person who is better towards other people and someone who lives selflessly. Because marriage ultimately is meant to teach you to live selflessly. And if that doesn't work, God gives you kids. Okay? That's how it works. Then there's another inconvenient truth about abortion that the media doesn't want to talk about. And the truth is that black unborn babies do not matter. As black babies are aborted, more than double the amount of Hispanic babies and more than 4 times the amount of white babies. So this is Margaret Sanger's dream come true, the elimination of the black child from society. And nobody wants to talk about it. No. If we talk about that, we're racist. We're racist because we don't want black babies to die in the womb. But that is our world. And then there are other policies that we should consider beyond abortion. So just a couple of those. Like, how about transgender surgeries funded by taxpayer dollars for those in prison? Well, believe it or not, Kamala Harris is all on board with that, as she was when she was the Attorney General in California. Watch.
When I was Attorney General, I learned that the California Department of Corrections, which was a client of mine, I didn't get to choose my clients.
Right. A client of the Attorney General.
A client of the Attorney General, right. Of the Office of Attorney General, that they were standing in the way of surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. And there was a specific case. And when I learned about the case, I worked behind the scenes to not only make sure that that transgender woman got the services she was deserving. So it wasn't only about that case. I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need. And I believe it was not only, I know it was historic in California, but I believe actually it may have been one of the first, if not the first in the country, where I pushed for that policy in a Department of Corrections.
So this is the Democratic candidate. Your taxpayer dollars are going to go towards people like the guy who participated in killing that Connecticut couple. Well, it didn't kill the man, but killed the wife after raping the daughters in a Connecticut home. Then they doused them with gasoline and set them on fire. He is now in prison, identifying as a woman, and your tax dollars will go toward his gender-affirming care, his gender-affirming surgery. You, taxpayers, will, under a Kamala Harris presidency, pay for those surgeries. So there are clear differences between Trump and Harris. And you, as a Christian, have to make that decision for who you think you can support. And then at some point, you got to go beyond being a single issue voter because other issues do matter. How about the issue of kids in cages, which I remember when the media narrative blew up over the fact that Trump was separating kids from the parents at the border when they were seized. And the issue was that you couldn't imprison your child, someone's child, with their adult parents. If the parents were going to prison, it was immoral to put the child in the prison with the parent. It would be also unsafe. So they put the kids in holding cells. And then the pictures were taken. The cells were built during the Obama administration, but they were then claimed to be from the Trump administration. And this was, again, part of the media narrative to demonize Orange Hitler. And this was a big to-do. This was a big issue. Well, guess what you don't hear about on the news? The fact that the Biden-Harris administration has lost track of 320,000 migrant children, with untold numbers at risk of sex trafficking and forced labor. As of May 2024, there are 291,000 migrant children who arrived in the U.S. as unaccompanied minors who were set free and never given a date to appear in immigration court, meaning there's no way to track their whereabouts. That's in addition to 32,000 that Immigration and Customs Enforcement authorities released into the U.S. with hearing dates, but then failed to show up in court. One federal whistleblower said that she believes many of these vulnerable kids could already be in the hands of criminals and sex traffickers. And the media silence is scary. There are other issues. We can go on and have talked about this, and we've got more in the extra content for you. You're going to have to become a subscriber to participate in that. But here is my final admonition to some of you, because some of you will say, well, I think that true Christians should choose neither. If I can't find a pro-life candidate, 100% pro-life candidate, an absolutist, a.k.a. Walsh style, then I will not vote at all. And there are some Christians who will even quote historic Christian preachers from the past, such as Charles Spurgeon from London in the 1800s. This quote flies around the internet making this argument, quote, "Of two evils, choose neither," end quote. Charles Spurgeon. But was he talking about choosing voting, your choice in voting? And the answer is no. He was talking about refusing to choose between bad theology and bad character, or any kind of evil, okay? In fact, we also have from his diary records of him talking about the fact that he believed he should vote unto God. These are his exact words in his diary. Quote, "In things divine, we are probably at one. You shall abstain from voting as unto the Lord, and I will vote as unto the Lord, and we will both give him thanks." This was in response to, history repeats itself, a parishioner complaining that Charles Spurgeon had the audacity to approach politics from the pulpit. This is back in the 1880s in London. And what does he say in response? "You abstain from voting unto the Lord, but I will vote as unto the Lord." And I believe that that is a great policy, a great idea to hold on to. And I would encourage you to do just that. Hey, that's the free content. But to see the extra content, you're going to have to become a dependable member. And there are 4 paid plans from $10 a month to $60 a month. And if you are in the $60 a month plan, you probably got free t-shirts already in the mail. But there are other benefits to the premium and standard, such as my book, Ending Emptiness, which is out now. And I am so excited to tell you that you can order it at endingemptiness.com. It is a manual for finding the fullest life heaven can offer you, as we explore Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon. And this is exciting news for me. I didn't even know this was a thing, but ChatGPT knows about me and my book. I actually entered this prompt, give me 5 good quotes from Ending Emptiness by Tim Hatch, and they came up really quickly. One of the quotes from the book is, emptiness is not a lack of things, but a lack of meaning. When we find our purpose, the void within us begins to fill. Or the 4th quote there, to end the emptiness, we must first face it. By acknowledging our inner void, we can begin the journey to wholeness. Or the last one, God doesn't want to fill your life with things. He wants to fill your life with himself, the source of all joy and purpose. Ooh, those are inspiring quotes. And if you would do me a favor, on the podcast app, not on the YouTube app, leave a review. That would be really beneficial to this content. And when you support us, we support Project Rescue and the American Bible Society. That's the show for tonight in the free content. I hope you would join me for the extra content. Become a subscriber today and support Christian content like this, because YouTube is always suppressing what we do. God bless. Have a great night.